Yeah, this drip all on my body, soaking wet the sunny. Looking like a walking lick, yeah, you can tell I'm grinding. Rolling backwards full of loud, I can't hear nobody.
What's up, fuckers? Episode 34 of the Beer Latte Show. I'm Steve.
I'm Danielle.
And today we are with Coach Kathleen O. Kathleen, how are you?
I'm doing great, Steve. Thanks.
So happy to have you on.
This is exciting. One of my favorite things to do is spread the good news.
What's the good news?
Well, depends on where you want this to go. We can talk about multidimensional beings. We can talk about psychedelics. I know you guys are into the paranormal, so I think it's all a little bit freaky. And it's Halloween, so it's all good without the costume.
So let's talk about you for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a coach, and would you say that you're like a therapist to most people?
Yeah, so therapy, in some ways, I find therapy is a little bit more problem focused and working sort of with the pain of people's experiences, whereas the coaching is really obviously people come with their own work, but I tend to work with people that have already kind of come through those pain experiences and they want to integrate their life in a whole way, in a holistic way. So they've had success, they're intellectual, mostly very successful in whatever career, if it's the artists, doctors, bakers. There's many different walks of life that I work with, but those people have found that they are in their life really quite solid and happy, but they really want an expansion. They want more. They want a deeper understanding of themselves and the world. So it's not so much therapy of like the working things out in interpersonal and communication and stuff like that. It's really just getting into the depths of their soul.
Wow, that's deep, literally. Now, how did you get into, I know you're very big into integration of hallucinogenics. How did you get into that?
That's a really good question. I feel like it found me, and it kind of came a little bit in a circuitous way. I was a child of the 80s. It wasn't like I was in the beyond the world of the 60s and the free love, but I grew up in a very small town, and there wasn't a lot of like heavy duty street drugs. Everything you basically had to grow. And so I got introduced to mushrooms as a teenager, which was a heck of a lot of fun. I couldn't really do anything too heavy. Alcohol really messed me up, even though it became a problem later in my life. But with mushrooms specifically, I really felt alive and had experiences. And interestingly enough, I had a lot of non-ordinary experiences in my own life that were through visions or understanding or nature, but I didn't really have the language to put to them at that age. But when I was in a state like when I was high on shrooms, I could feel more of myself, and I could feel more connected to those things that I had glimpses of in my day-to-day life, but really truly didn't understand. I didn't learn it in school. Nobody talked about it in church. Like it was the things that felt really out of the ordinary, but in with magic mushrooms, we called them then. It was the magic that I felt in so many ways. So I was intrigued, but it wasn't really something that I wanted to or could sustain because life went on. And later it was reintroduced into my life, truthfully, through our children. We have a blended family of 4 older teenage children, and they were having experiences with psychedelics that, as a professional coach, I understood where people transformed. Like I can, I have very innate abilities to feel people, and it's not really my job to be coaching or to be working with my children in a therapeutic way, but their emotions and their experiences, they're felt. And after psychedelic a psychedelic journey that one of the children had experimented with, there was like deep, profound changes, and they were not just fleeting. It was like psychological, fundamental, spiritual experiences that had happened in that got me really curious. Ironically, at the time, I was also recovering from my own addictions. I had kind of sleeper addictions. I had addictions to alcohol and refined foods. So it seemed normal to drink 2 glasses of wine, one before dinner and one with dinner, and think that that was like I actually thought it was kind of sophisticated. But also I had a very obese body and didn't know how to manage my weight, so or my anxiety and my emotions around it. So I was recovering this addiction that I had uncovered in some neuroscience, understanding what was going on with my brain and what I was consuming. So, the interesting thing about recovering that addiction is that I had a full blown existential awakening that felt like a near death experience. And the thing that our children were, one in particular, was experimenting with and understanding, I was going through kind of silently on my own. So, the and with that, many of my clients who are, and at that time it felt very dominated by men. A lot of my clients who are successful businessmen or business owners were doing a lot of psychedelics for the business, their own business development, their own success. But the support wasn't around it. They were doing ayahuasca or journeying with mushrooms or doing LSD trips in their like bro business groups, but coming back and having like these flood of emotions that they had to unpack and work out. So when I say it found me, it literally kind of landed on my lap, and I was like, fuck, I have to figure this out. So that was about 5 years ago, and I've really immersed myself in it. A lot of it, it's hard to find information, especially back then. It wasn't, we didn't have these open conversations where people were, or I didn't, anyways. I didn't have the community or the people that I could sit around and talk with. So I sought out training and ways I could become an integration coach and what was the best model for becoming an integration coach, and where people were going helped me understand what I needed because I was in it as well. So I became a coach trained in internal family systems, which is a phenomenal model for healing, especially healing unresolved trauma. So, which these experiences brought up in many, many, many people.
So when you said that I just want to go back just a minute. When you
Mhm.
said that one of your children had some profound, I guess, spiritual experiences, and ironically, you were going through the same thing, a similar thing. You could empathize, I guess. Do you think that's ironic, or do you think, and do you think, or do you think that's something more than ironic that brought you, I guess, for full circle to where you are now?
On the outside, it looks kind of ironic, but I think it was a divine plan. And the coming together, we're a blended family. So the coming together, really, there was a lot of healing that had to happen in, all our entire family. Both sides, both sets of our children, they endured bad marriages and bad divorces and bad relationships, that wasn't their fault. And we as a couple, my husband and I, we came into this relationship knowing like we had our work cut out for us. Like nobody was perfect. Nobody made, we were not, we had failed marriages. Like we were not, wonderful citizens of our past. Like and our children were a product of that. So as best as we all could in those circumstances, we got through it. But so, no, I don't think it was ironic. I think it was divine. I think we came together as as a blended family to really heal and to learn and understand that it is our responsibility to do that, not just for ourselves, but for each other.
That's awesome. And when you were younger and you dabbled in this, obviously there was no, dosage information or, what have you. Did you just do what everybody else did? And did you always have a similar type of experience?
When I was younger, yeah. So honestly, we just trusted that the guy we're paying $10 a gram for was giving us a gram. So, the price hasn't changed, which is hilarious. Um, and on the street anyways, but what I buy is, well, anyways, let's not talk about that. It's different in Canada.
Darn it.
It's quite different in
Yeah,
Canada.
no, right.
So, yeah. But yeah, so the experiences were, I would say, definitely measured at a gram. And what I know about mushrooms now, what I had experienced was quite like conducive to a gram of mushrooms. It's silly, it's fun, it's a little bit teary, and you get kind of caught up in a little bit of your own drama, but you work it out with tears and laughter and dancing, and then some visuals that were quite remarkable and fun. So I never had any kind of bad experience as a teenager, but I do feel like the dose was fairly accurate. And so a 1 gram dose, I think, is just a bit of a playground. So anything more than that, you're getting into you can get into some dark places. So, and one of the conversations I've recently just had is about bad trips. I don't, I don't, I don't really, I don't like that word. It's just, there's a lot of people have experienced a lot in their lives. And for the most part, in those places, when they go to that darkness, it is those traumas and those experiences that haven't been resolved. And it is bad because it wasn't good in the beginning, and it's not going to be good getting through it. I don't know that there's any good way, or joyful or loving or sweet caress with resolving trauma. So definitely, I know now that it was a risk, but it never happened. It has happened since, though, in like a controlled environment.
So you're saying you had bad trips recently?
I wouldn't say bad, because that's a thing. Like, I had my
Different?
life delivered. Yeah. Like the most difficult thing that I've ever been through in my life, other than childbirth. Yes. Yes, with mushrooms, but it was in a controlled environment, and I was open to it. I've been in therapy since I was 21 years old. I'm pretty well, I understand myself very, very well. But there are things that are just like hiccups in my life that just I can't figure out, or I don't understand. And I do know that those are the things that are really deep, deep, deep trauma. And I needed to go there, and I did. And like I said, my life was delivered to me in like a 5-hour showdown. So, but I got a lot of clarity and definitely a lot of healing, and I was in the right environment. So,
When you're in a controlled environment, something like that, like in a therapeutic type of situation, are you alone, or is there somebody asking questions, guiding you, or just there for you?
in my case, I was not alone. I wouldn't recommend doing it alone, for therapeutic purposes. Um, in As a professional, I do guide trips for clients. They're never alone. I don't even leave them to go to the washroom. And in those cases, we have an intention. It's a very well structured day. They know where it's going, and because I've been trained in this, um, I have a very well structured plan for the day, but I'm not directing it. Most of it is based on when they ingest, and I have a stopwatch, and I know where they're going at certain points based on the time. And if they are in a certain, sometimes I call it like a toilet bowl. If they're in a certain cycle, we need to switch things up and move things around so that they're not caught up in that toilet bowl feeling. so that their goal is, because we've set it out, that they have an intention, and it is to, I don't know, just as an example, this is a real example, but it's fairly broad, so I feel like I can share it. Like, what's my mission? What's my purpose? Why am I here? Why am I doing this work? And for somebody to get caught up in a conversation that sort of just loops back around, loops back around, loops back around, my job as the guide is to really just say, okay, how does this fit with this thing? And they can often, this goal, this thing, which is the goal to provide the clarity about your mission. So oftentimes, though, in those toilet bowl moments, they will find that resolution is how often they loop back through their traumas or through their pain. And when they get to the point where they need to make a decision, it's hard to make a decision because it's usually letting go of something. So when they're brought back to the clarity of why they're there, they can then make the decision. But before, these things are really locked in deep, and psychedelics definitely uncover it and unearth it. So when they get reminded of the mission or the goal to find their mission and goals in life, they can really just sort of take a step back and be more, find more clarity with their experience.
Now, when you're doing these, is it like what you said before, like a 1 gram trip?
No, a therapeutic dose is 2.5 to 3.5 grams.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's
What's that look like on like a plate?
On a what?
On a plate. What's it look like? I'm just
On a plate.
Like-
Oh,
like, is it a decent
Yeah.
amount? Like they're sitting there with a fork and
No.
knife, or
Oh my God.
yeah, no. So like if you were at a restaurant and you had like a hamburger and they served you with mushrooms on a hamburger, it's like that much. It's like a side order of mushrooms.
they have a side order of psychedelics. I mean, fries.
Yeah, exactly. And I get those on my burgers. I hear there's like in other parts of the world, I feel like I want to say Bangkok or Thailand or something. Anyways, it's like there's happy pizza, and then there's happy pizza, and then there's super happy pizza. And they're all, garnished with mushrooms.
See, I've always wanted to do mushrooms. I don't know exactly why I want to, but I've always been afraid to.
So your fear is that, that might be a problem.
I don't know what I'm afraid
Yeah.
of. Maybe I just don't. Maybe I just hear horror stories of people. Maybe they're just eating too much. I don't know. And they're having a bad time, or they're in a bad environment, or I don't know.
I don't know. I've done
Yeah.
mushrooms before, but then I've also done LSD more. So I feel like the mushrooms were like nothing compared to the little hits of acid that could really screw you up. That's where you would have a scary situation.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Mhm.
I don't even
Yeah,
like
so
mushrooms in
Ella-
real life.
Oh yeah, he
Yeah.
does not like mushrooms.
And that's only because I've never tried them. I just think it's disgusting.
Then don't try
Yeah,
it.
fungi.
Yeah, I'm like, look at that fucking thing.
Oh,
now I'm going to eat a
Like-
shriveled up one that's on the side of a burger. Like, I don't know what to do.
Oh,
Make it into a
Steve.
smoothie. You'll never see it.
You
There
can
you
make
go.
it
Psychedelic
yeah,
smoothies.
a tea. Yeah, no, there are. Oh my gosh, you can consume them in many ways. There's
can-
edibles.
There you go, Steve.
Like I can make like
Yeah,
a
little
brown,
chocolate.
like a chocolate chip cookie or something like that.
Yeah, no, well, their places, maybe it's not in the U.S., but in Canada, you can buy truffles, like chocolate truffles which are
Fuck yeah.
mushroom
All right.
chocolates.
The border's
You
open
can
yet or
buy-
no?
Yeah, no, I don't
Oh.
even think it's ever going to be open. I'm sorry. I
Keeping
know
all your
it's like-
shrooms to yourself, huh?
We can make them here.
Oh, yeah, there's ways.
Maybe that's my
It's-
problem. It's like Jersey
You just-
mushrooms.
yeah.
Can't trust these motherfuckers here.
Yeah, well, I have a client recently I'm actually not that far from you. I'm bordering Buffalo. So we're you're not that far.
To like throw them
But
across the border to me.
yeah, you just drive to Niagara Falls. I'll do that like zip line across the falls,
Yeah, see,
and
now we're talking.
there you have it.
Wee.
Yeah, no,
Just follow the river until we find like just a wooded path and just throw them.
yeah,
Take these.
yeah. There's definitely
1 gram. Call me
There's
later.
definitely companies and places that ship to the U.S. and or are available in the US. I promise you. Wink, wink. Um, so the yeah, you can. So even if you don't like mushrooms, you can make a tea, and with like uh, squirt of lemon or like lemon zest or whatever, it does taste like mushrooms. It tastes a little bit earthy, but personally, so this is the other most amazing thing about this experience that I've been so the what we call the coincidence of all of this coming together when my children were experimenting and we were exploring and trying to figure it out. That was one of the kids. The second kid, she was very introverted and had a lot of anxiety and was entering university a first year and felt that the experience was too overwhelming. She couldn't focus, and it was necessary for her to take Adderall. And that was that's where she felt that she needed to go. And I love brains. I'm fascinated by brains, and I have seen enough to know that Adderall is, for me, as a parent, it didn't feel like the right choice. So we just all band together and started researching microdosing LSD because it's a different type of experience. I would say the shrooms and microdosing shrooms or full tripping on shrooms is more of the emotional body and more connection to the emotions and more connection to nature. But LSD has this really sort of um, productivity, and it allows that it kind of just like parts the seas for people that have a problem focusing. So we sourced it, and because I'm involved in a network, an underground network of therapists and guides, I know where to go and to find safe drugs, and or know how to test them. So we were able to pick, get this and make it into a microdosing um, formula, and then we all as a family experimented with microdosing LSD to see what it was like. And she never had to, all of this to say that we have family therapists, they have their, we're working holistically with what she's eating and what she's putting in her body and how much sleep she's getting. It's not just, hey, take this and you'll be able to get through your first semester of college. But she did, and we were able to really help her find her footing in that situation. So it has been an interesting journey, and it was initiated by our children. So my husband I mentioned O is genuinely my last name because he had immigrated from Korea when he was a young teenager, and being an immigrant with a second language in high school in a foreign country, when he came here, even his family didn't speak English. So he was the oldest son, responsible, and had these enormous responsibilities. So culturally, he had this like black and white linear thinking. Fundamentally, he had to just survive. And when he graduated from school, he went into engineering. So he's like really formulaic, he's really structured, he's really linear and black and white, and very smart, very caring and kind and loving, and he's a good person. But again, like a lot of the people that I see as my clients, they don't really feel that expansion, they don't really feel that whole being within themselves. So his own work, his own personal work, has been like leaps and bounds and enormously transformative for him to work through everything that he's been through. So, and become something that he really feels very grounded and comfortable with. So it's quite fascinating.
That is fascinating that not that your husband is not open-minded, but that his linear brain would be able to go there or even give it a second thought. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, I agree. The first experiment with LSD, he started it was fun, actually. He started refurbishing, buying off like secondhand websites and thrift stores and garage sales. He started buying electronic equipment, and then he started restoring it and refurbishing it. And then vintage stereo equipment is hot. So it once he figured out that he could, pick up this hobby. He loves stereo equipment. He loves a lot of high-end audio. He likes vinyl, and um, he reads books and collects things and has tube amps. Like he's quite involved in that. But you can only do so much and only have so many. So once he figured out that he had this skill of refurbishing it, and he could buy things and then sell them again. It was such a fun task for him. So he still has that brain and still works with it, but works with it in new ways, which I think is so beautiful.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
And his relationship with your children, has that also changed?
absolutely. I would say, um, yeah, like we all definitely, as parents, I think we do have to lead and put in the work. They're young adults. Only two have graduated and two are still in school. So, and we are the primary parent for both sets of kids. So the the uh, the work that has had to go into reshaping the relationships, because like I said, we all came from some pretty unsettled places, and now it's not, we're dealing with people that think they know everything. I don't know how old your children are,
Oh,
but
I have a 21-year-old. Well, she'll be 21 in December, so we know.
yeah.
Even our 8-year-old
So
knows everything.
yeah. Yeah, so but it's like we're not taking it personally, and we're not caught up in it. And I think what he has really been able to do is see them as people and not as, children. And they do have their own ideas and beliefs, and we have to support that. We might not always agree, but it doesn't have to be an argument. So we've really those relationships have really grown into something quite beautiful. And I know the respect and trust is reestablished, and that there's really a solid relationship. And who knows, they're going to have their own lives and do, but even just through COVID, honestly, they were all home here. Two of them were abroad. They had to come home. The other two that were in school, they like many had to do their school from home. The school shut down and everything. So we had those not children at home for the last 6 months, and the growing that has happened within the family. And some of it has involved trips and experiments and a lot of talks and post COVID and during COVID and everything that everybody's going through, has definitely brought a lot up to work through. So it's been an opportunity. It's been actually a really healing time here.
That is awesome. That really is awesome. What does like a microdose look like if you were to look at it?
Looking at a microdose, so it's very small. So a microdose typically is a tenth or a 20th of a gram. So if you were looking at a 2.5 gram, that was the amount on a pizza. No,
Right.
not on a pizza, a hamburger.
On a hamburger.
Yeah. And it's so hard to like, if you've ever had like a capsule that is a herbal capsule of some sort that has, it's a tenth of that.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's not a large amount at all. Um, and most microdosing capsules have some other kind of mushroom or chaga mushrooms, reishi, lion's mane, or spirulina. I've seen cacao nibs. I've seen in using as filler, because it's actually such a tiny amount to ingest. But so it's a very small amount. And the beautiful thing about microdosing is that it's not at all. You don't have a high, you don't have any symptoms. Oftentimes with psychedelics, there's like visuals and trailers and distortions and stuff. You don't feel that at all with a microdosing in a day. It would be almost like that I love coffee. So it's like the first sip of coffee and life just sort of like feels like it's come together again. Um, it's that elevated feeling. It's a little bit lighter, and making sense of the world even in chaos is easier because it does your brain is working in new processes, and new neural pathways are being built, so you're actually not sort of stuck in that like conundrum of life. You're actually pushing yourself beyond that to see the new and to experience the new and to create the new. You're actually literally growing new neural pathways in your brain. It's the most fascinating thing. So the molecule of psilocybin is very similar to the molecule of serotonin.
Oh, wow.
So you're working on those receptors. And so, but the molecule of psilocybin has additional threads on it. And those additional threads actually force out the brain to reach for more. It reaches those edges and then beyond.
That is a great explanation.
Yeah.
So how fast would you start seeing like a change if you had, like, let's say you had depression or something like that? Where would you begin to see a change, or is it almost immediate?
It can be both, but one that I have a microdosing masterclass that I teach, because so many people want like a fix. And when you take a Tylenol, you want that headache to go away. And it does. We are pretty, hit send and want a response back kind of people. We just want that instant gratification.
Right.
It is, but there is the the but. The but is when I am explaining, as I just did, what the psilocybin is doing, the chemical is doing to the neural pathways in the brain as it's opening up. So my hands are kind of pushing out in both directions. So if you can imagine that depression is on the left side and joy and bliss is on the right side, and we live right in the middle between left and right. We live in the middle. So you insert psilocybin and you want to go into more joy, but you've been living a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety or whatever is created in the left, but you want more of the right. In order to do that, you have to actually move yourself into the left to get more right. Like you're expanding in both directions. So, yes, you're going to feel elevated and less consumed by some of those depressed or anxious thoughts. But some people do also find that they are a little bit teary or a little bit more emotional or irritable, because we have to actually, you can't, we can't just have the good without working out the not good.
Yeah, you got to break through.
Yeah, you have
Have a
to get,
breakthrough.
yeah. So it's both. So, but it's not something that you can't handle. Like it's not going to throw you on the ground and not let you back up again. It's going to throw in, yeah. So the things that we carry with us, like a bad day becomes a bad, converse. Then it's just a cascading effect of shit that we just don't get over. And all of that we accumulate in our bodies. So we are a collection of all of our experiences. And if we don't have an outlet, or if we don't have a healthy way to remove those from our day to day life, they just accumulate and they become depression, they become anxiety, they become outrage or road rage or whatever. So we do have to stir that stuff up, remove it, and then, grow a beautiful garden. So we have to get that dirt and soil worked in so that we can actually have the nice stuff too. So it's both. And most people don't want to know that, or don't want to do the work that is required to get it. So with a microdose and even a full trip, you're going to have both. You can have the light and the dark. I think we exist in these duality. We want the light, but we don't really want the dark. We have these judgments against all of it. I think it's all beautiful. It's all who we are. It's all who we are here to experience ourselves more of. So it's not one or the other. But when people have these experiences and they want just one, and they say, okay, but I had a bad day, or I had to like lie on the couch because I was feeling bad about a few things. It's not working. It actually is working. You're healing that shit so that you can get the good stuff. So, and the best thing about it, my friend Danielle and Steve, is that when you're healing a bone in your body, you can't see that it's healing, but you just trust that it's healing. And then eventually, that broken bone is no longer broken, but it doesn't become a stronger bone. In the way that you're healing your brain, you actually get a stronger brain. You get a more adept brain, you get a more resourceful brain, you get a more resilient brain, because you've dealt with all of that stuff, and you can deal with the stuff that comes in. So the good news is that it's not a treatment. In many cases, Imperial College in the UK has studied depression for, I think they started their studies in about 2012. They have now released that psilocybin for depression is not treatment. It's a cure.
Oh, wow.
Because people are able to grow their brain away from the depression and into something more productive.
That makes a lot of sense, because you're saying that it's so close to serotonin, but then there's two different types of depression. Am I right? There's like the other chemicals. I don't remember what they're called, but sometimes you can have less of those. But if the mushrooms are, or the psilocybin is all encompassing and it's always growing your new pathways, it just all makes sense. It just totally all makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so the freaky about this is that during my awakening, I couldn't figure out what was going on, and I did a ton of research. I did know that it was non-ordinary. I was experiencing this existential crisis, although I was working with professionals and they were like not sure if I was manic or admittable. It was hard. It was really hard. And I knew enough within myself to know that I would be okay if I just kept at it. Like if I just kept, literally praying every day that I would get through it. And um, I had to stay sober. I had to keep my food clean. And the thing that saved me was that I somehow had this awakening that allowed me to see the vibration of plants and trees and animals and the earth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I was drawn to the trees, and they have a beautiful energy, which is very maternal. They work as a community. They nurture and feed each other. They look out for each other. They support, and they have this beautiful, beautiful energy, which is, for me at the time, was incredibly healing. I felt like I was orphaned and adopted and reparented and grew up with the trees. Like I felt like, where the wild things are. I was literally this wild animal within myself, that the only place I felt safe and comfortable was with the trees. Meanwhile, I had a life, I had kids, I had a job. Like I still went through my life as it was, but it was challenging. So the trees held me, worked with me, gave me strength. And then one day they told me, it's time. You need to know this, and you need to look to the mycelium. So it was the mushrooms. And they said, you're this network of mycelium, which is beneath our feet. It is so tiny and so invisible that we can't see it, but it's across the planet, and it communicates with itself, and the trees communicate through it. And there's just this, like, it blew me away again. I just thought, what am I doing here? And how do I take this? And so when you're talking about the brain growing, there are a few things. Like I see it as the mycelium, and I see it as our world community, as humanity, because I think we're all that energy. Even though it's the mycelium, it's our brains, it's the capillaries in our body. It's all mapped on the same organism that is interconnected.
It's like one big computer. Like the mycelium is the, I guess, the motherboard.
Yeah.
Right. Wow, that's awesome. And yeah, we're all living on that. That's very profound.
It's kind of hard to wrap my head around that.
Really?
A little bit.
You should try mushrooms.
Apparently.
Yeah, you've been a little quiet there, Steve.
Yeah, trying to piece it together.
He's very, I guess, linear, like your husband.
Yeah. It's still fascinating. I love your brain. It's working hard.
It's trying. It's doing something.
So is there
Mhm.
any person that should not take microdose? Like, is there any type of person, like, I don't know, mentally ill or otherwise?
Yes. Good question. And yes. So anyone with a predisposition or even a genetic lineage to any kind of psychiatric illness, schizophrenia, bipolar, yeah, there are also medications that people might be taking because not because they have a psychiatric illness, but because they have a mood disorder like anxiety or depression. If they're taking something that's an SSRI, they're not going to have an effect with a microdose. They will have an effect with a full dose because the full dose of psychedelic is higher potency than a medication. But somebody who's microdosing, I do know people that microdose and take their antidepressant medication to get off their antidepressant medication.
To wean
But
down.
yeah, so it's not like as much of a withdrawal.
Right.
But I would say that the research has to be done on an individual basis for what people are doing and what they're taking and what they need to just really be a self informer and educator and advocate for your own mental health and well-being. But we, like I said, we tend to be a little bit of we do a lot like overdoers, and this is a minuscule amount taken 2 to 3 times a week. So it's a potent um, remedy, but we are so used to just popping pills every day to be better. This is to be better slowly, permanently, with the support of a team of, a family that understands, or that if you have a therapist or something. I think that because you may loosen up some of those edges with emotions, definitely have someone around you that can support you through that. Um, but for absolute sure, anybody with a history of a psychiatric illness is not a good candidate.
Steve, you're out. No, I'm like kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and and I've had a lot of conversations. I try to do psychedelic education as much as I can. I really want people to talk. I beat the drum for this. I've just sort of come out of the closet with my own personal use, my own personal experiences. I've been doing this underground for years. Actually, I do have a really good story. I remember we talked a little bit about, anecdotal stories, but I will share a story with you that I think is just phenomenal. So, but I've been doing it for a while, and now I'm talking about it. In Canada, I think it was April, we had, actually it might have been August. Anyways, it started with an A, whatever month it was. Who knows? It's COVID. It's like sometime, not that long ago. Canada approved 4 of our terminally ill people to have a psychedelic experience administered with psilocybin for end of life care
Oh, wow.
to reduce the anxiety of their death. It's it's coming. Like, it's not, we shouldn't be, exchanging phone numbers in back alleys. Like, this is real. It's really happening. So I'm glad to be in it and doing it. And as an example, this is completely out of, a normal context, but I have in my previous work supported women as a fertility specialist and childbirth. I helped people become pregnant and then prepare for pregnancy. become pregnant and prepare for childbirth. So it was a bit of a niche market that I did. And I really enjoyed it, but it wasn't a big thing. But interestingly enough, I was very good at it. And this was one of my party tricks. I got a lot of women pregnant. Um,
Wait, what?
so yeah. So I had a bit of fame behind that. And I then kind of that business dissolved as I made more efforts to work in coaching and with more like business and entrepreneurs. But I still had this tiny little following of people that would refer to me if they were in situations that were very challenging. And so I had a client it was in the last 2 to 3 years, let's say, and she was born in the 60s, let's say. So she had never had a child and was still pursuing a pregnancy and was getting to the point where people were just shaking their heads and turning her away with, strong feelings. And she found me because of my fertility specialty. I had two websites. I was actually keeping both worlds. I was trying to keep both worlds separate. This woman is very resourceful, and she found me and found a lot of my work that I did with the psychedelic integration and the fertility. And intuitively, she knew that if she had a psychedelic trip, then that would resolve whatever had not been resolved. And she felt that strongly felt that this was an option for her. She had been through 12 years of fertility. She had had 8 IVF transfers, and she was on her 9th and had never conceived. And she has a beautiful baby girl.
Wow. So she went with the trip and then was
Yeah.
able to resolve whatever it was, and that was it.
Yep.
Wow.
And she is, like I said, she was born in the 60s. She's like I, as much as I'm being honest with you, and she knows this because I told her, like, I had my doubts,
Right.
and we're so conditioned to believe that it's not possible because of somebody's age. And she knew that she had to unlock something, and she absolutely did. And I supported her in that and made every effort to believe as much as she did and hold that belief for her when she didn't. And yeah, so it was incredible. So it's not something she may not ever talk about it, but I think for people in similar situations, it could definitely help, because the anxiety, life and death, like I'm not saying life and death about fertility, but like bringing life in and not being able to, and then in the similar situation where these people are facing death, like the anxiety of our some of the things that we face are so tremendous. They're crazy making. So she was able to just absolutely overcome it.
That's very similar to, minus the psilocybin or the trip. A lot of women who come off IVF or come off, just totally stop doing anything to help them get pregnant. And then once they do and they relax and they have, that moment of, oh, well, we're giving up. And then it happens, like just the anxiety that's gotten rid of just probably has helped them in general.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. For women who haven't had that experience, hate that story, because yeah. But yeah, there's definitely one of those, just like, okay, I don't have to think about this anymore. I recently picked up just a conversation with a client that I hadn't talked to in years, and she was also a fertility client. She'd been through many, many years, and her last treatment, last IVF, last possibility, she conceived, and which was super great. And she was like, this is a singleton. This baby's always going to be just the one, the only one. And I literally just had a conversation with her, and she's pregnant naturally.
Surprise.
So yeah, she's like, yep, we're having another one. Never thought it would happen. And this one's free.
Free.
for now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Good one, Steve. So how's your brain back there doing?
It's starting to catch up.
Okay, because we haven't even talked about the dragons.
The dragons.
Now you're all right. Go.
Yes. Well, I think it's kind of fun, and I'm not going to get too crazy about it, but um, I during that time, actually before the real existential awakening time, um, the the crisis, which wasn't a crisis, but it felt a little bit like a crisis of my not husband, but soon to be husband and I merging our families together. Um, I was I just felt like I had, you know, I was taking really big risks because our children coming together and our families coming together and everything. And I remember thinking I just want to blow everything up because I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle the stress. And I was in the bathtub having a meditation and just like letting it all go. I was like, just God, give me a sign, give me a freaking sign. And a dragon showed up.
In the tub?
And well, like I was meditating
Oh, okay.
and, you know, it wasn't like right there, but it was kind of like its head was there and I was like, "Hey," and it seemed like we knew
Hey.
each other. Yeah, I was like, "I know who you are." And it was like, "Yeah, I know you know who I am, so we need to talk." And the dragon said, "You need to talk to God." And I was like, "This doesn't seem like the time. Like you're a dragon. I'm having I'm having a moment here and you're adding something to my life, which I don't particularly want. Thank you very much. So I didn't want to have to talk to God because I hadn't really built any kind of relationship that was good with God at that time. So the dragon was like, Mom, it's up to you. And so, but the dragon hung around. They at that time was just one, and I would make connections a lot with the dragons in breath work. So I'm also a breath work facilitator. So the breath work time, which actually creates non-ordinary experiences. Stan Groff, who was an LSD researcher in the 60s, he had to shut down all of his LSD research and then wanted to recreate the brain that LSD activated. So he started working with shamans and learned that what he calls holotropic breath creates a non-ordinary state like LSD. So I've been doing breath work without knowing that I was creating a psychedelic state for like 15 years at that point. It had been like a tool because I felt like it gave me something to do with my crazy brain. So, which is what happens when you have an addicted brain, but also a traumatized brain. And fascinating that there's many facets to my brain that were actually just out of survival. But because I no longer needed to do that, that part of my brain just ended up being quite consumed with anxiety or irrational thinking. But the dragons and God apparently had a plan. And so the dragons would show up in breath work and convince me to talk to God and figure out, how it was going to learn about what I needed to learn about, which I think was preparing me for this literal breakdown. So when I was completely broken and needed faith, it was the dragons that said, "Oh, by the way, remember when we told you you should talk to God? Well, this is the time you need to do it." And so that was the time with the dragons led me to my faith in God or humanity or Mother Earth or whatever kind of came through that existential awakening. And at night when I slept, I was in dragon school. So they explained how the universe worked. They explained like this mycelium, but I saw it as like this hologram. They explained the vibrations of the earth. They explained the life cycle. And I would be riding dragons all night and having these lessons that were just being downloaded in my sleep. It was exhausting. Anyways,
Now, was
but
this during microdosing or recreational
no,
dosing?
no, this was during like
Just your
existential
breath
awakening.
work.
Yeah, and breath work and just life. It was just life. It was pretty intense. But the dragons, they promised me that if, as long as I had this connection to them and to God and to my family and to the earth and to everyone, and just made sure that I was doing this work for the highest and best, and that I continued to be vulnerable and open to this transformation, that they would support me. So I work with a team. There's 5 dragons now. They showed up sort of for different purposes, but one is my primary dragon. Yeah. And I even knew that there was a pyramid in the world that I had to visit because the dragons were going to give me information when I arrived there. And it was in Bosnia.
A
So
pyramid in Bosnia.
it's Pyramid of the Dragon in Bosnia. So my husband and I got married, and we asked for like travel vouchers as gifts because we didn't, we didn't need anything. So if people wanted to give us a gift, they contributed towards our honeymoon. So then he's like, "Where are we going, honey?" I'm like, Bosnia.
To the wretches of hell, honey. Doesn't that sound great?
Yeah. So actually, we went to Sarajevo. Sorry, we went to Croatia and Montenegro and um, Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I had to go to the Pyramid of the Dragon to prepare for this next pilgrimage, which was to um, Medjugorje, which is in Herzegovina, which is between Bosnia and Croatia. And Medjugorje is a place where Mother Mary appeared as an apparition in 1984 to 4 children,
Right.
and she gave lessons. And so that's where I met my cosmic team. That the dragon said, you have to do this work, and your work is to meet this team, and then this unfolding of your life will happen. And so that team told me that I have to reach more people and I have to bring them to their divine. So my work has to be on a larger scale, and that needs to help people truly connect to their source. So
and
that's
from
why.
there, you just knew.
Well, I was scared. I was completely scared out of my mind. I thought this was a bad idea. Like, are you fucking
Came
kidding
across
me?
the country, across the world.
What do you mean you thought it was a bad idea? You already listened to the dragons. You showed up
I know,
there,
but like,
and then you're like, fuck, maybe this was a mistake.
no, I thought like, when you get the call, it's like, hey, this, it's your turn. And you're like, oh, I don't want to go. Like, it's your turn to jump out of a plane. Like,
What's your
I don't
husband doing
know.
at this point in like
So,
on the trip? He's like, the fuck we doing here?
well, he's like, so he thinks I'm fascinating, which I think, sometimes is just him tolerating me. But he's not.
He's madly in love, let's be honest.
We are, yeah. So he tolerates me and he puts up with this. And sometimes he's like, I don't know what to do with this. So I'm not going to argue, and I will, it's pretty here and there's good food and there's beer. So we're good. Like, we're fine. But like, if the 2 times when I went to the Pyramid of the Dragon in Bosnia, I knew, like, I felt like I had the chrome chip implanted in my brain. It was like, there's something big that's going to happen with this information. I don't know what it is. When I literally the next day was at Medjugorje, it was Jesus and Mary and this team of 12 what looked like men. I had no idea what it is. I didn't know anything about it. I was like crying and hyperventilating. And because the dragons told me to talk to God, I was talking to God, and God was telling me, just stick with it. They have messages for you. And their message was, you need to reach more people. And you are not doing the work you're meant to do. And I was like scared. I thought, I don't want this message. I want to unknow this, because I just want to be like my own little me trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And literally since that moment, and then I came home and I privately, please, listeners, do not ever Google this because it's embarrassing. I started this like YouTube channel where I would like secretly go into the woods, like film myself on my iPhone. I
Wait,
was like,
pull this up, Steve. No, I'm kidding.
Like Blair Witch
I'm like,
style.
Literally, because I had to get away from all people so nobody would see what I was doing. And I thought, okay, I'm going to talk about like the attachment theory, and I'm going to talk about, emotions and why feeling emotions is really important. So I challenged myself. I was going to do YouTube videos for, I wonder if there's a way I can omit those videos right now.
I
Like,
don't
who
know.
cares? Anyways, so I went out and I filmed these videos because that meant that I was actually reaching more people because I was filming YouTube videos by myself secretly and not telling anybody. But then I literally was financially squeezed out. My practice wasn't, I have a base of really good clients, but there was things I didn't want to do anymore. I didn't want to be people's, like, I don't know. It just wasn't working. And I needed to shake things up really, 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 really big. And so I wasn't brave enough to do it. But financially, it was getting to the point where I had to make a really big change. And so I started facilitating groups. And as soon as I opened the gates to more people, they showed up every time, every time. I'd never ever facilitated breath work. I talked to my mentor. I said, I think I'm ready. She said, damn right, you're ready. Get on it. I did it. And now I have a membership where I have a virtual classroom. I have like multiple, like I have many members in my membership. I have a little bit of a following in different social media worlds. And like I'm actually reaching people. So, and everything's okay. But yeah, that's where the dragons came in.
When you say breath work, forgive my ignorance, but is it anything like I don't know what kind. Is it like a fluttering type of breathing that opens your pineal gland, or is it nothing like that? Nothing like.
Yes, about the pineal, not so much about the fluttering. I don't quite know what you mean by that, but this is like intense breathing. So you're just like really picking up the rhythm of your breath, and there's a chemical exchange that happens in your body where you're breathing. And often people think it's hyperventilating, but actually as the breath comes in, the oxygen kicks over into CO2 very, very quickly. And the part of your brain that measures if you're actually okay measures CO2, not oxygen, which is interesting. So because you've oversaturated your blood with CO2, then you don't have to breathe as much, but you continue to breathe. So it shuts off all parts of your brain that are thinking about, okay, I've got to breathe, I've got to, do all this stuff. And you just sort of float in this blissful state. And yes, it does activate your pineal gland. And the method that I have sort of created is a hybrid of many ways that I learned how to breathe. I've been a dedicated breathwork um, student and practitioner now. It's almost 20 years, but it's the music is crazy. I mentioned earlier, I love your intro song. Like we're breathing to music like that, and didgeridoo, and like electric music from a Russian nightclub. There's music from every language that I can possibly pull from the corners of Spotify and Apple. And I make these really amazing playlists. And it's a 45-minute set. And some people are just breathing and like getting into it, getting into it, getting into it. People are crying, they're laughing, they're having a great time. Some people are dancing. I can't see what they're doing because they're on Zoom. But in my studio, when I had my studio, I opened a studio. It was the most beautiful sacred place. It still is because it exists. I use it very occasionally, but I had my studio for 10 weeks. I opened it in January 2020. So it was fully operational for 10 weeks. But breathing in an enclosed space right now is not recommended
Oh, really?
on each other.
Oh,
Yeah.
to be around one another. Yeah.
Yeah. Like in group.
I thought you meant when you're sitting home on your Zoom. I was like, wait,
No,
what?
no. Like,
Are we
like a
talking
studio.
5K? So is this like?
No, 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 no. No, like sitting in the studio, it's like set up like a yoga studio. So people just are on mats and
Right, right. You're all together. Yeah. It's frowned upon. Yeah.
so maybe one day I'll be able to open it again, but I'm not rushing to do that, obviously. Yeah, so that's breath work. I would love if you're interested. I there's people if they follow me on Instagram, in my Instagram bio, there's a free class. They can, it's a free pre-recorded class. It's kind of fun. The playlist is pretty good on that one. There's also an iTunes playlist, but I didn't know this one particular song was kind of a trendy song, so I might change up that playlist. But I I have this really really awesome sound engineer that I work with, and I curate the lists, and he mixes them, and then I use them for my private groups in the membership. So, but if you ever want to come, tell me and I'll get you in there, and we'll just have a good time. It's really it's really a good experience for healing.
I'm all about that. Love music. Music's my life. And I love, well, I don't know much about breath work, but I totally love
Oh,
meditation.
you love to breathe? Oh.
I do enjoy
Yeah.
to breathe. I do it. I find it's, life-giving.
It's pretty important.
So,
Yeah.
have you ever had any other than the dragons, and even before maybe when you were a teenager, have you ever had any other, maybe not existential, but just crazy, like, where did that come from? Kind of like, I don't know, trips?
Um,
Did you ever question your reality? Like, what is this? Why would I have thought that?
yeah, so that's a good question. I'm not so like always I always felt I was a hyperactive kid. So and there was a lot of reasons why I would escape my body, but I felt very disconnected from myself. So I spent a lot of time just like I would say probably astral traveling, um, where I could have just escaped everything. And I was good at it. I was able to just be outside of everything. And
Naturally?
yeah,
That came natural to you?
what's that?
Astral travel came natural to you?
Yeah. So um, it wasn't a good, it wasn't good. I wasn't
Oh,
doing it for reasons that were safe. I was doing it because I was unsafe. And that's what kept me safe. And some people say, well, you were disassociating. Yeah, well, I was having a good time. So and I learned how to do it. And in other parts of my life, when I actually figured out what I was doing, I was able to do it. And I can do it. I can i can traverse many dimensions in the work that I do. So I do have connections with, and in the past, I didn't know that this was what I was experiencing. But when I became unaddicted, because I think for a large part of my life, when I was coping with a bad marriage and when I was coping with small children, like these aren't the things that I was necessarily focusing on. And because I had to kind of disconnect from this other world that I lived in to be in third dimension, um, the way I kept myself um, in 3D or in this human experience was through addiction. So I was cutting myself off from that other stuff because I couldn't handle it all at once because I didn't know how. And so that was in my 20s and 30s. So as a child, that was when I was spending a lot of time in other dimensions with other beings, other I would say they're spirit guides, but mostly they were non-form. They were just a comforted. I felt comforted, and to to look back on it now, I would say that it was. I know now that it was most likely the dragon that I was with for those times, and I may not have been astral traveling. I may have been, flying with my dragon, and those were the things that really filled me up as a kid. So in my 20s and 30s and dealing with life, and in my late 30s, dealing with like it took a long time to unravel my relationship with my ex-husband and reestablish myself within myself, because I kind of lost a lot of who I was through all that. So in my late 30s, early 40s, it was just coming back to that. And what I understand about healing and what I understand about connecting to all those other places, like you have to be really okay in your life and in your body and in the world, I feel, and safe in that to really explore the other dimensions and the other parts of ourselves that are multidimensional and that are connected. And it wasn't until I found the love of like the solid love of another human that really trusted me no matter what, that I could actually really just go in as far as I needed to go and learn as much as I needed to in those places. So, um, yeah, I hope that answers your question. I know that I was always connected. There was always this thread to something. I didn't have a firm understanding of what it was until, um, truthfully, until I met my husband. So, because I could actually truly be this and it was okay.
When you astral travel, did you ever just go to another room, or was it always like another dimension?
Um, yeah, that's interesting. The differences. So, yeah, so I guess it would be realms. So I'm just trying to process the question because dimensions are definitely, yeah, so realms I think are in this time where we are in different. So, and dimensions are definitely beyond that. So I've
Oh
had
no, I meant into
experience.
just another room. Like, did you ever just go into the bathroom, or like see your brother or mother, or like just
Oh yeah, no.
another family member doing something? Or did you always, was it always,
No, it was always out.
it was
Yeah,
always, oh wow, that's crazy.
because I don't, I don't know if I've been, that kind of experience wasn't like I didn't want to be there in that experience.
Uh-huh.
So, it was just better to be other places. But I do know because of those, what I learned in those dimensions, um, I have, I, and it's funny that I don't even know what it is because there is a word for it. But I receive information through my body. So I sense emotions, I feel emotions. I know that when I'm working with clients and when I'm working even in my breath work, even in the virtual room, I can use my body and I use Reiki now because before I didn't know. And it's a risk getting sick if you're using your body to be a conduit for energy, and it's your own. But now I use like the energy of all types of different sources. Mostly, when I learned Reiki, it was powerful to be able to actually just use Reiki and not my own source, but I use energy from other like crystals and um, pendulums and sound and chimes and drums and the music that I choose. I know that it's all a conduit for emotion. So I really give it kind of a multi-layered experience because I know how human brains work and I know how I can actually alter that frequency so that that happens outside of the natural tendency that our brains want to stay within. So I have a pretty good feeling that when I do those things, like when I'm creating the playlist or when I'm working with breath work or when I'm working with a client, I feel it all through my body. I feel the movement and everything that's happening in those places as my body is giving me the information.
I think we all have
So,
a little bit of that, but we're just not tuned in. Would you agree?
oh yeah, yeah, because I think we all vibrate and we are all part of nature. And we've been cursed with intellect and ego, which I don't, it's a blessing and a curse, but I do think that we all get to be unique and beautiful in our own way, but definitely we're not separate from anything. So it can be messy though, because once like there have been times, especially even when I indicated I wasn't using Reiki, I was definitely not clear and clean on my transmissions because I was picking everything up. I was like a dust bunny for emotions. I was just like picking up everybody's and everything and not really being able to clear or to be clear. So, but that was years ago and I didn't know better. So I do know now and definitely keep it really clear and not about me. That's the most important thing.
It's definitely an important thing. Even if you're a masseuse, they pick up those energies and they don't even realize it.
And keeping ego out of it and keeping my own opinions and thoughts out of it, So, and then I've had a couple people that want me to be able to tell them things, and I'm not going to do it. Like, it's not my job if I'm at a dinner party to tell people what I think or feel or know, because I'm standing beside them and I can feel it. I'm not, I don't, that's, I'm not a doctor diagnosing people at a party. Like, it's not my job to do that. But I can definitely pick and choose and be where I need to be and do what I need to do. But sometimes it's hard for people to accept that because they know, either they know I know or they sense I know, but I don't. And there's lots of things I really don't want to know. I really don't.
And it's
So,
still thrown at you.
yeah,
That's not fair.
yeah.
I guess there's a downside to everything.
Yeah. But I also just have to keep myself grounded and safe. And I do that with breath work, and I do that with my own team, my dragons, and the galactic team that I work with, as well as one of the things I started the story but didn't finish it, which was that there is a team, which is, it's not, it's, they're beings which are called the Hathors. And the Hathors are multidimensional intergalactic beings from Venus, and they vibrate and they don't communicate with words, they communicate with sounds. And so a lot of what I was hearing in my head, I thought was kind of like just a low hum of anxiety. And and that was my whole life. And I know that connection was actually the Hathors.
Did you get
So
any insight from that?
later I did. And from when I understood it more, there's a very interesting man, and I'm Tom Kenyon, and he's in Seattle, or Orca Island, I think, or anyways, he's in Seattle area, and I'm running out of words. He channels the Hathors and communicates whatever it is that they're saying through his voice. It's absolutely, like, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. And it was uh, when I found, so the vibration of this grid, this holographic grid that I was seeing, which I told you later, like, made sense when I understood the mycelium. The sound of it was this hum. And so what I know now with the dragons and the work with Jesus and Mary and the work with this galactic team and the Hathors, they're all the support of in other dimensions. And it is all through what I believe is called the cosmic Christ energy. And the energy of the cosmic Christ is in us to find it and the ultimate truth, which is love and peace.
Yeah. I've come to that conclusion too in my whole life. All my experiences. It's nothing but love. Everything is love.
Do you believe in ghosts?
Ghosts, I haven't had any of my own personal, like, well, I guess so. So I've lived in very old houses, and I felt the presence of energy. And so I guess that would be ghosts. And the I had an office building, and the basement was like flagstone and dirt. And I had a cleaning team in there, and they would be like, "This is so gross. This is like, there's spirits in here." And I knew that they were there, and I never interacted with them in any way. There were times when I put obsidian rocks and I smudged, and they were always quite, my sense was they were always quite pleased, because there was a lot of people coming and going out of there. Like, it was an office building, so there was people coming and going. And so the spirits that were in the building really felt like kind of the congestion of a lot of energy. So, but I've never, it's so funny that you asked that, because I knew they were there in this other home that I had. It was an 1835 farmhouse There was, and I know it seems weird that I'm saying that they're so old, but they are old buildings, so there seem to be old presence there. But I never really interacted with them. I just sort of coexisted. It wasn't, it was never freaky. It was just like kind of the way it was. It was like having a, I don't protect, I'm a dog person. So it's sort of like having a cat. I don't really pick those things. I don't know why.
They're always just like there.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
Every person we've talked to that stayed in a farmhouse from the 1800s
Right.
has had a fucking ghost.
Yeah. It's always the farmhouse. It's always.
Yeah. I don't know. But it was an older house in like the building, the commercial building was also an old home. And the farmhouse was old. So, yeah. And my house now is like 1950s. I don't know. I don't sense anything really.
Less ghosts back
Uh,
then.
But there was no, yeah, who knows? There's no ghosts there.
Well,
they'd
perhaps
better,
because people were dying more in the hospitals in the 50s than in the 30s.
Less inside your house.
Yeah.
No, she said
Yeah, that's good.
1830s.
And less terrible dying. So probably died off. No pun intended.
I've been
Yeah.
saving the most important question of the night. This is sincerely important. What's your favorite candy?
You are going to be very disappointed.
Oh, no. Is it circus peanuts?
I have zero tolerance for sugar. I have not had sugar.
Oh, that's right.
It-
She's a clean eater.
So
4
this has been a
years.
waste of time.
Well, what
Yeah.
was it?
What was it? Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Do you have this in the US? It's called Big Turk.
I don't know.
Yeah, I've seen it. Like
Yeah.
the U with the something above it. Little, I don't know, asterisk or something like TUK, right?
Yeah. So it's that stuff, Turkish Delight, that like kind of jelly, goopy.
On the way, don't fucking eat that stuff anymore.
Yeah. Well, anyways, covered in
never seen
chocolate.
it.
So it's like jubes covered in chocolate.
Oh, that
like-
doesn't even sound yummy. That sounds weird together.
Oh, fuck. I failed the candy test. Jesus.
She is no longer our friend.
Yeah. And
When you first started the answer too, you said like you, and then you paused for a while. I was like, what?
You're her favorite candy.
I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah, you are my favorite candy, Steve. I've never set eyes on you, but you are eye candy.
Yeah, it was exciting.
Yes. So, and I also thought you were going to ask me about beer because of the name of the show, which I also don't consume. I'm sober. So, but lattes, on the other hand, I most likely could not live without.
See, that's where Danielle's at. She's like lattes daily. Without lattes, she can't.
What's your favorite candy?
I don't think she functions without lattes, really. My favorite candy is probably going to be like a Reese's. So a good amount of chocolate and peanut butter.
But only the regular type of Reese's.
Yeah, anytime they try to change the recipe, never works out. But
And no Reese's peanut pieces.
nah.
I keep wanting to say peanuts.
And you can find the guest at Coach Kathleen O on Instagram and TikTok. That is Coach KATHLEENOH. And as always, you can find us at thebeerlatteshow.com, The Beer Latte Show on Facebook and Instagram, and at Beer Latte on Twitter. We'll see you guys next week.
Yeah. This drip all on my body, soaking wet the sunny. Looking like a